Yeah, we're joined once again for one of my favourite conversations of the week with Ambassador Yoon Chol, who's in the studio with us, offering his expertise and experience in the diplomatic fields. How are you doing today, Mr. Yoon?
Very good. How are you?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Cruising through the springtime now. Feeling pretty good about the weather and stuff.
Right. That's getting better.
It's a hectic spring, though, if we're looking at the Asian continent, and especially where we're looking today. Yeah, these days, Myanmar is in the news quite a fair bit. The Southeast Asian nation in turmoil. It's been on the news every day for weeks now. Let's talk about what's going on there and their implications in the wider region and for democracy in that country. First of all, a lot of people might not know too much about Myanmar. Could you briefly give us your little introduction on it?
Right. Let me go and have some stroll in my memory lane that should show my age. But to Koreans of my generation, Myanmar was remembered as Burma, and it is known as one of the strongest soccer team in Asia, sometimes beating even our own Korean team. Particularly when it rains, they were very good, and we were so poor. So people of my generation remember those humiliation in the rainy day. And they because of that, those soccer games, we remember those names like Mong Tim Mong, Mong Mong Tin, and Mang Aung. Those names also fascinated us as the symbol of Burma. And Burma also produced the first Asian Secretary General of the United Nations, Dr. U Thant, who served from 1961 to 1971. And as you know, the second Asian Secretary General of the UN was Korean, Mr. Ban Ki-moon. And thirdly, we also have a tragic memory about Myanmar, which was the assassination attempt on the Korean president in October 1983 by some North Korean agents. The president was saved, but the attempt claimed the lives of many senior government officials, including Deputy Prime Minister for Economy and Foreign Minister.
Yeah, yes, there are a lot of I believe something like 20 or so people died.
Right.
A lot of them very high government officials.
Right.
It was the North Korean Kang Min-chol, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
He eventually became quite famous. He's the longest serving prisoner in Burma.
Right.
Before he died a while back. But yeah, the Rangoon bombing, it's now known as a very important.
Aung San Muslim was also known to Korean people.
Yes. So they do overlap in their history as well. But from Burma to Myanmar now, it's the country has been changing. Yeah.
Right. Burmese is the biggest tribe or ethnic group, but Myanmar itself is encompassing many various ethnic groups, and the official name of the country is like Union of Myanmar.
Right.
And that country was also one of the countries that gained independence after the Second World War, in this case, 1948. And we may not remember that, but this is the largest country in Southeast Asia mainland. And the area is actually bigger than that of France, but population-wise, Vietnam and Thailand are bigger. And people are very nice and smart, and the country has a lot of potentials. But it suffers from various problems like ethnic strifes and military dictatorship. And the military, in their own language, they are called Tat Ma Dao, staged a coup in 1962, the year when I was born, and they remained in power for decades now. But another Aung San, Dao is the title for the noble people. Dao Aung San Suu Kyi led the opposition party, National League for Democracy, since 1988. But the party she was put under house arrest after having their first victory in 1990 elections. So at the time, after already 3 decades of military dictatorship was there, but another 3 decades passed until the military presented its own roadmap for liberalization with their new constitution in 2008. So they kind of finished their direct rule in 2011, but they stayed in politics as a legitimate force with its own party, USDP, Union Solidarity and Development Party. But after a landslide victory by Aung San Suu Kyi in 2015, they were finally in power. But Aung San Suu Kyi could not become president because of the foreign nationality of her family members, but appointed herself as state counselor and foreign minister. But because of the mechanisms the military already had put in the constitution, they continue to exercise a very considerable influence in politics and government policy. So there have been some difficult years for Aung San Suu Kyi because many Myanmar watchers criticized her for being a pawn of this military people, and she was also blamed on the governmental policy of discrimination and brutalities against ethnic minorities like Rohingya people.
Yeah, she did. She did cop a lot of criticism for the situation in Rakhine State with the Rohingya, and it's. I mean, it's. She's not completely devoid of blame, but at the same time, she was in a very precarious situation since 2015. Like you said, the military did still exercise great power in the parliament, and a lot of people were, I suppose, a bit shocked at what a figurehead she was. Really, not enough power to really run the country herself. But then we've got this election that's just passed, and what's happened here?
Well, last November 2020, they had another election, and NLD, the party of Aung San Suu Kyi, had bigger landslide victory. Now, the military-backed party, USDP, is complaining. They are contesting the result of this election with an argument that there had been a widespread election fraud. And the military is backing this argument, and they were very nervous, I guess, by the possibility of losing their grip on power. So finally, they staged a coup in the morning of February 1st. And then they declared the state of emergency for 1 year, putting Aung San Suu Kyi and other Democratic leaders under house arrest again, with ludicrous charges like illegally importing walkie-talkies for her security team. But another irony is that because of this incident, I think the respect and admiration about Aung San Suu Kyi is coming back, and she has become the symbol of democracy again, and people are rooting for her. Yes,
it's quite a situation she's gone through in the last decade, isn't it? From sort of democracy darling, then sort of being a magnet for the ire of the world with the situation with the Rohingya, and then back to being the democracy darling again.
Right.
And obviously, the longer this drags on and the more bloodshed we see on the streets in Myanmar, a lot more support she's getting from abroad as well. Now, you mentioned your younger days having Myanmar and their soccer teams and all that business, but have you actually been to Myanmar yourself?
I had the fortune of visiting Myanmar myself as part of the UN delegation led by Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in May 2008. At that time, you may remember there was a very severe cyclone Nargis, hit the country very hard, and Myanmar badly needed the international help, but was very reluctant to engage with the outside world. So Secretary General Ban enlisted the support of ASEAN countries, the Southeast Asian nations, the neighbors of Myanmar, and then persuaded the government of Myanmar to host international conference for disaster assistance to Myanmar in Yangon, its economic capital. So taking the opportunity, the Secretary General Ban also visited Naypyidaw, the capital, to see the strongman at the time, General Tan Sui, and managed to persuade him to open up the country to receive the international aid.
Right, so that was a win there for the United Nations for sure. It was, I suppose, Myanmar in general, with the military giving up sort of a lot of their power, was seen as a real good turning point in the country's history, yeah?
Right. The strongman at the time was Tan Sui, no doubt, but his prime minister was called another confusing name, Thein Sein. He was a more a gentle and reasonable guy who later became president, and he was the one who worked with the United Nations and President Obama and the international community in overseeing the transition to what they called the semi-democracy under the new constitution they prepared. Somehow that constitution preserves their power, but still it was the basis for their withdrawal or dissolution of military junta in 2011. So another thing interesting to Koreans is when General Tan Sui was meeting with the Secretary General Ban, he said he wanted to become another Park Chung-hee of Myanmar. Maybe he wanted to continue his dictatorship while creating an economic powerhouse. But Mr. Ban said Park Chung-hee didn't do his job this way. He opened up the country to the world and made it develop. So somehow Tan Sui was persuaded, and he opened up the country, at least for that international assistance.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hell of a thing to try and emulate the government of Park Chung-hee, especially on the economic side of things. Mm-hmm. And I mean, anybody who's read a little bit about the times of Park Chung-hee knows that it was no easy measure either, mm-hmm. And not without its pitfalls and economic shock therapy and whatnot. It was a difficult time. But then let's get back to this coup, and what's it looking like at the moment in Myanmar?
Now, the Commander-in-Chief, General Min Aung Hlaing, who has been representing Tatmadaw, the military, during the transition to semi-democracy, is in charge. And he says that after a state of emergency for 1 year, there will be a new election. So with this situation, most of Western countries are condemning the coup. Particularly the Biden administration of the United States is considering a reimposition of sanctions, which were in place to pressure the military junta. But the adoption of the UN Security Council statement condemning the coup was blocked by China, unfortunately. And China is even warning the West to refrain from getting involved in this situation, and calling this an internal affair. And the neighboring countries of Myanmar also take this very cautious position that this is an internal affair, and they don't want to criticize the military group at the center. But on the other hand, the people of Myanmar, as you said, have been on the streets since day one, and they demand the return to democracy and the release of Aung San Suu Kyi and other leaders. Initially, the military responded rather cautiously with the water cannons and curfew only, but over the weekend, there have been reports about the increasing casualties, including 4 deaths and more than 100 people who are injured, with the use of live ammunition. So, and now the people of Myanmar are coming back with a general strike. They declared this Monday, and making the biggest day of defiance against the military. And they called this day 22222 revolution, 5 twos, meaning 21 February 22nd.
Right.
And that is after what they did in 1988 with the 4/8, 1988 August 8 uprising, which was again crushed by the military.
Right, yeah, it is worrying times there, and obviously ASEAN treading carefully as well. They do not want this to sort of spill over. A lot of those countries do have their own problems to deal with democratically as well. But Myanmar is sort of a powder keg with the amount of ethnic minorities it's got there as well. We are going to have to just cut ourselves off there, though. If you do want folks to listen to the rest of this interview, check it out on gfn.or.kr. It will be up on the site in its entirety. But we're going to have to say goodbye to you there, Ambassador Yoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Now, just continuing on there, Ambassador, you're obviously a very connected man, yes, working on the diplomatic scene for so long. And do you know any people on the ground in Myanmar at the moment?
There are many friends of mine who are from Myanmar. But mostly they are in New York because they became my friends while I was working at the United Nations. But one of them sent me a message over the weekend because last Sunday was my birthday. She was sending a message of congratulations.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. So I was thanking her with my message, but I asked her about her family back in Yangon, and she bursted out with the emotion,
right.
And she expressed her very strong feeling against the military dictatorship. And in the same message, she urged the international community, including Korea, to come forward to defend democracy in Myanmar. And she was very much worried that Myanmar may be closed from the world again after more than 50 years of military dictatorship. But on the part of Korea, Korea now is one of the leading democracies in Asia, and we need to show our firm stance for democracy and human rights, particularly in the light of our own history of overcoming long years of military dictatorship. So the Korean embassy in Myanmar already released a statement before the coup, because there were right. signs of this deteriorating situation and military taking some action. So they emphasized the need to respect the election results as the will of the people, and implied that the military should restrain itself. And after the coup happened, the Korean Foreign Ministry also expressed deep concern and called for release of those detained leaders, and also called for peaceful resolution of the disputes.
Right, yeah. Look, I mean, if you want to look at a country that has tread on a very similar path that Myanmar is right now, we need look no further than right here in South Korea, where, you know, juntas and military strongmen were the part and parcel of Korean politics for a very long time, until they achieved full democracy. So if anybody knows what they're talking about historically, it's Korea, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, what implications of this event can you draw back to the people of Gwangju? Because they have a bit of a history themselves, don't they?
Right. It's not only about the people of Korea, but this is particularly about the people of Gwangju, because what's going on in Myanmar is exactly the case of military crackdown on peaceful demonstration of civilians, which resonate with people of Gwangju who still remember the painful memories of their democratization movement of May 1980. So while the whole world is condemning the military of Myanmar, the leading photo artists of Gwangju, I heard, have organized an event to show their solidarity with the people of Myanmar. The event is called Save Myanmar, and it'll display photos of Myanmar people in their fight against the military, as well as their peaceful, ordinary life. So it started from yesterday, February 23rd, at May Hall with the support of Gwangju Asia Women Network, and will continue until the end of February. So I hope many citizens of Gwangju will visit this photo exhibition and renew their resolve to defend democracy and human rights as important universal values, and show solidarity with the brave people of Myanmar. And I tried to drop by myself.
Yes, there you go. Where is that again? Down at the May Hall.
May Hall.
The May Hall up until the end of February. Get on down there and have a look at that. It's a very important time in Myanmar, and something that I think a lot of Koreans and especially people here in Gwangju can definitely relate to. We will have to leave it there, though, Mr. Yoon. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have a chat with you.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it myself.